Back when Mike Pompeo was just a Tea Party backbencher, he made a name for himself as a congressman by prosecuting the case against former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And he did it with the help of the State Department Inspector General. On May 25th, 2016, the Inspector General released a report critical of Clinton's email practices. Remember that story? And that same day, Congressman Pompeo released a statement touting those report's findings. Quote, Hillary Clinton has claimed that her use of her private email server complied with State Department regulations. Today's State Department Inspector General's report illustrates that is not the case. In fact, that State Department IG concluded that using her personal account to send emails to State Department accounts was not an appropriate method of preserving any such emails that would constitute a federal record. Wow, it does seem insane they made a scandal out of that, doesn't it? Well, a lot has changed because now Mike Pompeo is the Secretary of State. Some things have not. The IG's report he touted, that Inspector General Steve Linick, that was the same guy investigating him, the guy that Pompeo just had fired. It is just the latest shady move from a guy who has been at the center of a host of scandals, from the official apologetics for the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi to the impeachment of Donald Trump. Remember that? Pompeo was sort of the center of that. Now, the recent reporting suggests he has his eye on higher office. Here with me now, someone who knows the State Department from the inside out, Nayyera, former State Department senior advisor. I guess first we just start with, like, the strangeness of this, of a cabinet official telling the president to fire an IG that's investigating.
I mean, there's IGs in every agency, and their whole job is to give a layer of transparency to what's happening in government and to really maintain that tie with Congress. We know that Secretary of State Pompeo refused to sit down with a congressionally requested IG investigation into the arms sales into Saudi Arabia. Why? Because those arms sales were actually unilaterally by Republicans and Democrats voted down, and they instituted, the Trump administration instituted some emergency powers authority in order to be able to get it passed. So that raised a lot of eyebrows. Like, why now, particularly when Democrats and Republicans are uniting in making Saudi Arabia a pariah state? Now, this is also, Chris, against the backdrop of the FBI accidentally unredacting the name of a Saudi embassy official who supposedly gave logistical support to the 9/11 hijackers. Like, this is all happening within the same week, and you would think that this would be the type of scandal that would ultimately have somebody removed from office.
Yeah, I mean, the at issue here, it seems to me, is there's a real question about whether basically Congress wants to bar these arms sales. There's huge bipartisan majorities, and they basically tell Congress, like, screw you. It's a little bit like what they've done with the border wall. And the IG was investigating that, but it's not clear that, I mean, it's really a question of whether what they did was lawful.
Right. And that's, again, part of the purpose of the IG is to help people figure out, are you abiding by the rule of law? There's a lot that happens in an administration. I get that. And I've had to deal with IG investigations where you're like, wow, we're really talking about this nitty gritty. But this is not just the, of the three things that the IG was investigating, this is not just fancy dinner parties with CEOs and wasting taxpayer dollars, right? It's not also you were using professional staff to run personal errands. Normally, that would be bad enough. This is, you are fundamentally undermining foreign policy objectives that have been set for decades, that Congress is looking to do, the humanitarian objectives, and just not operating in concert with the way government is supposed to work. For what reason, right? Like that's what's hard to understand, other than the fact that the Saudis like to do business in a way that Donald Trump does. They like to buy their way into countries and buy access into things. I think that's part of the connection that Jared Kushner has had with Mohammed bin Salman. And this is really what Saudi Arabia is relying on now, is a relationship with the Trump administration. Biden has already said that he wants to make Saudi Arabia a pariah state. Congress on both sides of the aisle has spoken out. So Saudis, ironically, after decades of being entrenched with the United States, are really losing ground here, and Trump is their holy grail.
Final question. Pompeo, you mentioned Pompeo's been having these, like, sort of soirees at the State Department, these salons. They call them Madison dinners, I guess. His wife has been involved. She's keeping the Gmail list. A lot of people view this as, like, he's preparing for 2024. He wants to run for president. That's why he won't run for Senate in Kansas, which he's declined. It does seem to me, though, that there is a lot of skeletons in the closet that, like, right now he's sort of in the aura of Donald Trump and things aren't penetrating, but I'm not sure that's going to last.
Now, I will say there is a legitimate reason to have CEOs, American manufacturers or companies who want to do business overseas, come to the State Department and do what we call economic diplomacy. That's fair. That's not what we were seeing with the Pompeo meetings. Most of these organizations were not looking to expand overseas or build foreign ties. These seem to be friends who, on top of, they were paid for, wined and dined with harpists. I cannot imagine if Hillary Clinton had a harpist at a State Department event, how Pompeo would have reacted when he was in Congress.
That is a great point, and I can sort of imagine. Nayyera Huck, thank you so much for making the time. That is all in for this evening. And the Rachel Maddow Show starts right now, as it does every night at 9. Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening, Chris. That was a little weird.
I'm just saying it's another day in quarantine, and it's another 9 p.m. And here we find ourselves again.
9 o'clock on the nose. Thank you very much, my friend. Artfully done and gymnastically done in this case, as always. Much appreciated. Thanks to you at home for joining us this hour as well. Happy to have you here with us on this Wednesday night. When President Trump was impeached in December, oh my God, that was only December. You might remember that one of the impeachment hearings that the Judiciary Committee held was one where they heard from a panel of constitutional scholars about the legal threshold for impeachment and how members of Congress should understand the seriousness of the president's behavior in light of what the founders meant and what they wrote when they wrote impeachment into our constitutional system of government. One of the scholars that Congress heard from in those hearings is Pam Karlan, Professor Pam Karlan, who's a sort of legal superstar from Stanford Law School.